Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be doing another state of the industry chat here. Basically, there's been a lot of stuff going on in the video game industry here in recent days, and I want to yap about it. So here I am. And that said, I'm going to go ahead and proceed with the assumption that you know about the Xbox shakeups, you know about what's been going on at Sony with Bluepoint, and that you're kind of aware of general industry stuff. I understand that I'm not really your first stop for gaming news here. Of course, why would I be, right? So I'm going to kind of speak to you as if you are on the same page as me with your knowledge here. So all of that said, I am going to talk about Xbox, I am going to talk about PlayStation, and I'll probably talk a little bit about Nintendo as well. It's just kind of like a big picture, the big three in the console space. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, thanks, and here we go, all right? We'll get it kicked off with Xbox because I think maybe that's the place where there's the most to say, at least for me right now. Obviously, Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond being out is a pretty big sea change over there. And the gal that they've got coming in to replace Phil Spencer is Asha Sharma, who came from the core AI business of Microsoft. And I've seen and read some different takes on, what to expect here from Microsoft based on that. And yeah, I don't know. It's a little hard because she put out her statement. Well, actually, I guess Microsoft on their blog put out a statement, or made a post, I should say, rather, that had a statement from Satya Nadella, followed by one from Phil Spencer, followed by one from Asha Sharma, right? So I'm kind of referring to that blog post here. And she kind of, Asha Sharma and her part of this was kind of all over the place in her statement, and people have been trying to make sense of that, because she calls out specifically we're going to recommit to Xbox, starting with console and the players who have been with us since the beginning, and I'm paraphrasing here, right? But this is pretty close to what she said. And some people are like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that they're going to return to putting out traditional console? Are we going to see the successor to the Series S and X systems here getting announced now under her leadership? And I'll head that off by saying no, absolutely not. And I'll come back around. Give me a minute. I will get back to why I'm saying that. But I think it's important to kind of also mention the other things that she says in her blog post too. She talks a lot about, and this is the third part of her statement. She talked about, we're not going to flood our ecosystem with AI slop. Games are art made by humans and always will be. And again, I'm paraphrasing here, but this is more or less the gist of what she was saying. And she talked a bit about, or just mentioned rather, new business models, right? So I'm looking at that part more than I'm looking at the rest of it. I kind of see the part about recommitting to Xbox and the core fans and stuff. I don't want to throw this person under the bus, Asha Sharma. I've never heard of her before this. I don't know much about, I can only make assumptions, right, about where she's going to take things based on I think previous behavior at Microsoft that has kind of telegraphed where things are going, right? The wind has been blowing in a certain direction for that brand for some time now, and I think she is going to continue taking it that way. I don't see her taking the business back to a traditional console release and then bringing back exclusives. And it's really weird because she was interacting with people on social media and stuff back on Friday after her announced, arrival as new CEO. And somebody, I think, said to her, hey, we want to see console exclusives again over here on our Xbox systems. And she just replied with, hear you. Hear you. That's it. Okay, so people were, of course, speculating wildly about that. Oh, are they going to bring console exclusivity back to Xbox? And again, no way, man. That ship has sailed. I think engaging with people on social media the way that she did that day was very weird because I don't know. Some people, I heard someone say they thought it seemed like she was just typing their questions into Copilot and having Copilot answer on her behalf. I think that's maybe a little cynical, but I don't know, right? But that hear you thing was very weird in particular, and that was also the last interaction or the last answer that she put out there, which is, it's so strange because it's like you don't have to do that. You don't have to answer questions from people on social media. Like, you literally just got announced as the CEO. Ride in for a moment, right? Let the dust kind of settle. You don't have to start telling people who aren't within the company, people outside of the company, trying to prove yourself to them on at such an early stage is, I think, just a weird play to make, especially considering the way that Phil and Sarah made their exit. It seemed very sudden, right? Sarah Bond made a post on LinkedIn saying, like earlier that morning, before this was announced, basically like, putting a poll out there for Xbox fans on like, what do you want kind of thing, or what interests you kind of thing, right? It was just a sort of like putting the feelers out, kind of like, let's get some feedback on stuff. It is the kind of post that you wouldn't put out there if you knew that you were going to be getting, your departure from the company was being announced in just a few hours, right? Like, you would never make a post like that. So I think this was unexpected. It sounds like there's been just some scuttlebutt around saying that people inside the company were surprised by this or blindsided by it, right? And so we'll see, as details come out, I guess, about how much of this was actually planned. I know Phil put out his statement talking about like, oh, this is something we've been talking about since fall, but I would just say that both Phil, and this applies to Sarah as well, they have to play nice on their way out the door if they want to get their severance packages, right? I mean, that's just how the corporate world works. You can't, leave the company and basically say, oh yeah, they let me go, I didn't even see it coming. Nobody does that, at least not at like companies like this, because deals are made with, severance pay packages and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, they don't want to endanger any of that, and also they want to not burn bridges and have them, their reputation in good standing for their next gig, wherever that may be, right? So obviously, yeah, they got to play along. So I don't know how much I would put stock into what Phil was saying about this being planned since fall. Maybe it had, but Sarah seemingly certainly left in the dark on it, and I think that. I don't know. I can't. Maybe I'm wrong here, but it's hard for me to imagine Phil just kind of keeping that under his hat for months here, knowing that Sarah was going to be suddenly ousted, right? But you never know. Corporate world's weird. People, one can only guess, right? So I will say Phil always struck me as like a real fan of video gaming, right? I mean, that guy had the chops, certainly, with his gamer tag and the time and hours spent. I mean, you even heard stories about there was some game that ultimately ended up getting canceled, unfortunately, but there's like a game that he was playing in a meeting that was in development, and he was so into that game that it like ruined the entire meeting. They had to like pry it out of his hands and turn it off because like too much time had passed and they needed to actually meet about something, right? You don't do that in a meeting. You don't get like enamored with a new game if you're not into video games, right? And so I think there's a lot of authenticity there to Phil Spencer, and certainly his time at the company. Like, I will remember it as him getting Xbox back into the game here, back into relevancy after the disaster of Xbox One, right? I mean, they were in such a bad place under Don Mattrick, and then Phil got to take over, and we saw so many changes at the company during that time that were positive, and in some ways, like, changed the whole industry, right? You saw Game Pass, for one, which... Right, for better or worse, I mean, debatable the effect that had on the industry, but it certainly forced competitors to respond, right? Sony has their PlayStation Plus, Nintendo has their Nintendo Online with their retro stuff that you can access. So I have a hard time thinking that stuff comes along without Xbox Game Pass coming along first. I also think, they were at the forefront of crossplay. So if you remember back, like I do, Fortnite was one of the earlier games that had crossplay across platforms. So you could get online on your Xbox and you could play with your friends on PlayStation or Switch. And that's the standard now for the most part, right? If a game comes out on multi-platform and it's an online game, you better believe it's going to be cross-play. Because if it's not, it's going to have a hard time making it otherwise, right? It's just kind of the standard now, and I think definitely Phil and Xbox deserve their flowers for making that kind of thing happen. So you could also talk about the things that went wrong at Xbox under his tenure, right? They closed studios, and I said in my last video, the studio that put together Hi-Fi Rush, a critical darling that won BAFTA awards and stuff, and they closed, or rather sold that studio, sold/closed it, I guess, and said they even pitched a Hi-Fi Rush 2 that got turned down, which is kind of mind-boggling. I don't know what you want from a studio like that, if not more of what they did that they got so right. And Perfect Dark also getting canceled. That was their big flagship AAA venture that they were, hopefully putting, I say hopefully, but they were putting a lot of effort into, a lot of development costs sunk into that, and people were excited about that, and they still shuttered that. And I think that, I said this again in my last video, that speaks to a low tolerance for developments that are struggling, and it made me worry a little bit about, I think, State of Decay, I said at the time, and also Fable. And thankfully Fable seems like it's doing all right now, right? They just had their Xbox Direct thing not that long ago where they were looking at like Forza 6 and Fable and a couple other games, and I thought Fable looked pretty good, and I think a lot of people thought that. So obviously there is still room for a troubled game development over at Xbox Studios to find its way out of that and still happen. But that said, I do think that this new changing of the guard here might tighten the reins on that tolerance even further. I think that games that are struggling are going to have a harder sell to justify their existence with the new leadership. That's just my theory here, right? Now, I know that Asha's blog post statement said that they were committing to great games and recommitting to Xbox, but I'll tell you why I'm a little cynical about that. I just, knowing that she came from Microsoft's core AI division and knowing how just absolutely ravenous Microsoft seems to be for their AI business to take off and to really find its way into everything. Knowing all that, I don't think she's there to greenlight new studios and new projects and stuff like that, ambitious projects and things like that. I think what it's actually going to be is, in terms of the studios, in terms of the game development, I think it's going to just continue to be leaning into their biggest IP, the ones that are successful, the ones that seem to be bringing in, reliable money, like your Diablos, like your World of Warcrafts, your Call of Duties, your Fallouts, those kinds of things. Those are what I think, all of the stuff at King, right? Your Candy Crushes, your Minecraft, that kind of stuff. Minecraft's not a King, but you know what I mean, right? Like those really, really big, huge games are the ones that they're going to continue to lean on more. And I think that there's going to be less and less appetite for things like, oh gosh, what was the one that just came out? I'm blanking on the name. South of something. Oh shoot! It was like that one with the kind of very different looking art style, and the frame rate was it kind of had that Spider-Man frame rate thing going on with. Anyway, South of Midnight, I think was the name of it. Anyway, sorry, yeah, I got hung up there for a moment, but games like that, I think, are in trouble over at Xbox. That's just my hunch, based on past behavior from Xbox and from what's been happening with studios. If something as big as Perfect Dark can't be rerouted and salvaged somehow, then I have a hard time believing that there's going to be a lot of interest for seeing smaller things through difficult times, or even through lengthy development times. So that said, I'm kind of worried about Gears of War E-Day. I'm just going to put that out there. I've been hearing people talk about the pillars of Xbox, right? Their IP that like matter the most, and they'll say, Forza and Call of Duty and Halo, and they mention Gears of War in that breath. But I'm going to keep it real. As a massive Gears of War fan, as somebody who has loved that series and played every single one of them and been a very dedicated Horde mode player for a long time, I'm not convinced that Gears of War has that same kind of value for Xbox, and especially not under the new leadership. I think that if we don't see gameplay from that soon, that is in trouble, man. It's on the chopping block. I think everything in development at Xbox is probably going under a microscope now with this new leadership. They're going to reevaluate everything. They're going to be talking about how can we bring AI into the development process so that we can shorten development times and cut costs. And not that that's necessarily a bad thing, because I think that there are ways in which AI can be a very useful tool. But they are going to need to walk the line of where is it being used as a tool and where is it being used as a replacement for human creativity, human ingenuity, right? And I don't know enough about those, about Asha or about even Satya, the CEO, to say how much of the human element they're willing to sacrifice to put AI at the front of their efforts here. I don't know. I mean, I think it's easy to be cynical and say, it don't look good, dog. But I truly don't know. I mean, they recognize that they've got products that are bringing in some revenue here, and you can't just completely toss that aside and say, like, replace everything possible with AI without understanding that you're going to sacrifice your product to some degree, right? I mean, they have to do this in a smart way that makes sense. And not just like, let's eliminate 30% of every development team and somehow make up the difference with AI. Stranger things have happened, but I just don't anticipate something that drastic kicking off here right away, right? So, but I don't know. Back to Gears. I'm very worried about Gears just because we haven't seen anything or heard anything since the announcement trailer. And Gears of War Reloaded came out on PlayStation 5 last year, and my understanding is that it didn't even do 1 million units, which is kind of scary. Now, this is just on PlayStation 5 because like Xbox players didn't have to pay for that game. PC players didn't have to pay for that game. Assuming, let me actually walk that back a tick. If you had Gears of War Ultimate, you didn't have to pay for Gears of War Reloaded, because all it was just, basically an up-resed version of that with like some new texture work done here and there, some added reflection work, that kind of stuff, lighting changing. And I don't mean to downplay the efforts. I know how dismissive that sounds, but I just mean it wasn't enough of a new experience to ask existing owners of Ultimate to pay for Reloaded as well, right? So that's a better way to say that. Rather, I don't mean to downplay the work that it took to make that game happen, or to make that version of the game happen. But I do think that it sounds like, and this is just rumors and hearsay and maybe me trying to read tea leaves here, but it seems to me like Gears of War Reloaded didn't do as well as they had hoped, and they were surprised that it didn't move as many copies. And I will say I kind of was too, to hear that it didn't crack 1 million on PS5. And granted, my info's a little outdated. I don't know. This goes back to like the fall, but you would think that it would net an easy 1 million in the first month, right? Just because, like, wow, one of the biggest names under Xbox traditionally is now here for $40, and I don't know. I guess people looked at it and said, "I'll catch E-Day," or this is too short, or I mean, there's a lot of reasons that you could look at it. Personally, as a Gears fan, I think it was a mistake to put it out as just Gears of War Ultimate again, more or less, because you've got a multiplayer mode that doesn't offer any kind of meaningful progression, right? Nothing's unlocking as you're playing. You're literally just watching a number tick up next to your profile name as you play matches, and that's pointless. Like, nobody cares about that. And then you don't have a horde mode, which is the third pillar of the Gears games, and has been since Gears 2. Right? It is Gears is three things. It's campaign, it's horde, and it's multiplayer. And to put it out with 2/3 of that is, I think, a big mistake. And then, really, the multiplayer, as I said, just had no progression. So, also, I will add too that it was absolutely savage, I think, for PlayStation players who were new to Gears, trying to go in and play that game against like PC and Xbox players who've been playing Gears for a really long time. I mean, I hadn't really played competitive Gears, like multiplayer Gears, in a good while. And I went in there and was like the best or second best player in most of the lobbies that I was in, because PlayStation gamers just needed time to learn the game and to acclimate to it, right? Like, there's so many things that they didn't know in the early days of Gears multiplayer. So tough sell to tell people like, oh, play this multiplayer game, and get absolutely stomped by savage veterans of 20 years. Good luck. Yeah. Anyway, I'm getting hung up on this for too long. I'm gonna keep things moving here. Here's what I expect down the road from Xbox. Okay, with this new leadership. I think Asha Sharma talking in her post about like new business models, right, and a way to provide tools for development that unite teams. I think that's where I'm going to diverge a bit from a lot of the other commentary out there so far on this, and I'm going to say that I think what she might really try to spearhead here is some kind of answer to Unreal Engine, but from Microsoft. I think with all of the vibe coding out there, and I've seen it in my own job. I've seen people who have no coding experience. They don't know how to like build a web page or anything like that. Just use a couple of programs, one that they get a license from the company for, and they can put together a really nice looking web page in like an hour, right? Not even. I mean, it goes together quick. And that's just a small window of what I've seen into like how people can actually make stuff with AI in a way that is like kind of useful and meaningful. So I can just kind of imagine areas where you might be able to apply this into game development and think like, is that what she's after? Does she envision some kind of Xbox engine that can be used by all of the game studios, and that they can then license out the same way Unreal Engine is licensed out, and have that really driven by AI as well? Is that kind of what she's thinking about, I wonder? And think about this too, the animation industry, like movies and whatnot, are using Unreal Engine, right? So maybe they look at that and say, hey, we could get a slice of that pie too if we had something that could be utilized for that space. So I don't know, that's just my kind of like really swinging for the fences idea there. And who knows if I'll be right about that or not. The thing that I do think I'm going to be right about, I don't see them putting out any more hardware that they make. I think the ROG Ally stuff that they did in 2025, the partnered handheld that was branded with Xbox branding, I think that is where all of their hardware is going to go from now on. I think your hybrid PC, Windows OS gaming thing that they're gonna, that everybody seems to think they're putting out, me included. I mentioned this in my previous video. I think that is going to be where all this stuff continues to go. I don't think they're gonna put out an Xbox Series Y and a Series Z. I think you're gonna get that PC hybrid, and they're gonna figure out a way to marry the Xbox console digital library with the PC ecosystem that they've got there, and that's see, my dogs agree. Anyway, that's where I think that they're going to be going. I think it's all Windows and it's AI. Clearly, they have telegraphed that pretty strongly at Microsoft that's where they think the future is. So I would not expect dedicated Microsoft or rather Xbox manufactured hardware from them. I think the other factors too that you got to consider when thinking about that, even in light of her part of the blog post, again referring to Asha Sharma's letter in the blog posting, saying like recommitting to Xbox and starting with console, who's been with us the longest. What does that mean exactly? Like I'm going to double down on what I just said. I don't think it means new hardware. I think it means that they're going to continue to serve those customers through Game Pass. I think, day one launches and stuff with their first party stuff. Maybe they're going to work on doing, I don't know, a big third party agreement for something big that they could put on Game Pass day one. I don't know. I wouldn't expect too much there, though. I think it's really going to be, we've got such a big library of huge titles under our own roof already, so let's just continue to lean into that, and that'll be how we continue to serve the console people. I don't think you're getting a price cut in Game Pass. I don't think you're getting... what are they going to do? They're going to put like Series S and X consoles back out into, they're going to ramp up production again on those? I don't think so. Not with the way the hardware industry is looking right now. I mean, you've got the shortage in RAM, the shortage in hard drives now, and crazy stuff happening in that sector. So that's all impacting things, right? Sony even said recently, oh yeah, we've got enough supplies, I think, to serve, to continue manufacturing the PS5 through 2026. So like they've had to put that statement out there to say like, yeah, we can keep making PS5s for now. Don't worry, for now. And everybody's kind of looking at things because I mean, Steam just had to delay the Steam machine, or Valve, I should say, had to delay the Steam machine that was supposed to come out Q1 of 2026. Now it's delayed indefinitely due to all of this craziness going on with part availability and the increase in prices and stuff, and of course you have to add the stupidity of tariffs on there as well. So yeah, to tie this back around to Xbox, I just don't see them like putting those consoles back into ramped up production again. I think that's kind of impossible at this point. So you're just going to see those continue to phase out of stores as they have been. I mean, I've got a Walmart in my area that I can find a Series S and an X in. Last I checked, like a month ago, they were still there. But a lot of the other stores by me, nothing. There's not an Xbox at Best Buy. There's not an Xbox at Target. There are no Xboxes that aren't used at my GameStops in the area, it seems like. So yeah, I just don't see console ever recovering, and the environment right now that everybody's facing is not one where you could just easily turn that back around again. There's just a number of factors at play here that I think are going to mean that those days are over. Also, consider too that the U.S. has always been Xbox's stronghold. It's always been the region where they've done the best business. Like, they do not have a presence in Japan. They are way, smaller in Europe compared to how they're doing here in the States. I mean, PlayStation dominates Europe. So when you think about the economy in the U.S. being in a slump, like for real, it's just hard to imagine that a new machine is going to come out costing $1,000 and going to do all right. I mean, they can't even sell their existing stuff for less than like $400 and I think $750 respectively. There's just no way you're going to launch a new console in that kind of environment and expect to do all right. I mean, it's suicide. They're gonna learn the lesson if they did that, and I don't think they will. But if they did, they would learn the same lesson that they in the 90s, you had 3DO and Philips CDI, and those things were insanely priced, and they sold like shit. And that's what you would see here, I think. So, anyway, yeah, to recap, I'm worried about the new leadership at Xbox. I think it means tightening down on budgets. I think it means shortening development times. I don't know that it's going to be great for games. I think we're going to see probably some game cancellations, maybe a studio closure in the coming days here, and you're going to just continue to see them do the thing that they've been doing, which is lean into partnered hardware, and that's where that business is going to go. One other thing. I left this out. I can't believe I almost forgot to talk about this. Speaking of all of the crazy hardware stuff and the availability, or rather lack of availability for certain componentry and stuff like that, I do think Xbox is in the best position out of the big three console players right now to do something in the cloud gaming space. You've got this is an Xbox thing that has been underway for some time now, and there is I don't know, I guess your mileage may vary as far as like how good that service is for you. But the fact remains, I can turn on my Samsung TV right now and be greeted with a banner at the top that says, play the new Assassin's Creed or play Halo on Xbox here on your TV, right? That's a thing that Xbox has out there that PlayStation doesn't have out there, Nintendo doesn't have out there. And so if we find ourselves in a spot in the coming days, or I guess months, where hardware is a real factor and people want to play games without having to buy expensive hardware, or they just can't get hardware, that cloud option being available is something, So, I mean, they've got to really dial in the marketing for that, and I honestly don't know how much that stuff even works right. I would think it's probably okay for a lot of things, but my guess is you wouldn't want to play competitive Street Fighter 6 over that, right? You'd get your ass handed to you. You wouldn't probably even want to play competitive Call of Duty to any like serious degree, because again, the lag, input delays, all that kind of stuff being a real factor there. But if you want to load it up and play Fallout 76 or something like that, like it's probably actually a good option, I would imagine, right? So, I don't know, just throwing that out there. There's something to that whole cloud gaming thing in terms of like being an option for people who either can't find or can't afford hardware, and it's a move that they've got on the chessboard that they could make. So. All right, so let's talk about PlayStation. They've been on my mind a lot lately, and I imagine they've been on a lot of people's minds lately. Let's go back a little bit to earlier in February. They had that excellent State of Play. All right, I watched that. A lot of people I know watched that. We were all riding a pretty good high that day. I was feeling so good, man. I watched it, and I went for a run afterward, and I was thinking about all the games that I saw while I was out on that run, just feeling good. The skies were blue that day. The sun was shining. And I was just like, oh, man, 2026 is going to be such a good year for gaming. Everything feels right here, And then now I find out that they've closed Bluepoint Studios, and I'm just like, what? Why? Like, what are you doing, man? You've got this studio that helped launch your console with the amazing Demon's Souls remake that everybody loved. And, okay, strike one, you put them on a God of War live service game for whatever reason. It sounds like actually Bluepoint might have actually wanted to work on that because they had assisted with the God of War Ragnarok development, I think. And so they were maybe wanting to work on this live service game. But even so, you've got this studio that made the Shadow of the Colossus remake. They made the great Demon's Souls remake. They got all this technical knowledge of the PS5 console. You couldn't put them on another remake or remaster, you had to close them down. Like, think of the talent that you're letting go out the door here. Think of the brain drain of people who will maybe leave the gaming industry altogether now. You always run that risk anytime you close a studio. You're looking at people like either going independent, which not all of them can do, or they just straight up say, I'm done. The industry is too volatile. I'm going to move on to something more reliable. And they seem like such a valuable team. I don't know why you would close them down and not just put them on something else, right? Like, for example, look at Bloodborne. People have been clamoring for just a Bloodborne remaster release for years. You know how little it would take to please those people? You could just put out a version of Bloodborne that ran on PS5 at 60 frames per second, and you wouldn't have to do much else to it. Maybe you could add a few extra bells and whistles if you want to, but honestly, I bet 60 frames per second would please a lot of people, and it would probably move, I would bet, another million units easily of Bloodborne, right? It would bring it back into relevancy again, have people talking about your system again. I don't understand why you don't just do something like that. You close their doors altogether? Like, are you serious? What a failure in leadership, in my opinion, here. Like, it just... I feel like it demonstrates a lack of understanding of what makes PlayStation, right? I've been with PlayStation since the very first console, since that very first launch. I got one at launch, and I've been with them since 1995. And I will tell you what makes PlayStation for me. It is not Fortnite. It is not Roblox or Minecraft or Call of Duty. You can play those games anywhere. You can play those games anywhere, man. Like, the stuff that makes PlayStation is Ghost of Yotei, God of War, The Last of Us, Horizon. It is those games. I mean, it used to be stuff like Twisted Metal, Killzone, Wild Arms, if you want to go back to the OG PS1 era. We're literally in an anniversary year for Wild Arms. 2026 is... 25-year anniversary for Wild Arms. They could have done a Wild Arms remake. People like RPGs, JRPGs. That would have been like an easy win, I think, in the PlayStation space. But no, they didn't do that. So I don't know, man. I just feel like I am less and less convinced that the people running the ship over at PlayStation care about PlayStation the way that I care about PlayStation. The way, it doesn't mean to them what it means to me. And that's why I'm just starting to feel kind of down on the state of the industry in general right now. You look over at what's going on at Xbox, and that's kind of that is discouraging. It's concerning. I look at PlayStation here, and I thought maybe we were going to get some wind behind us, some wind at our backs here, and 2026 was going to be a great year for them. But instead, I'm getting this notification here that one of the best studios they had is just being shut down. So I don't know. I have to worry now about all the other PlayStation studios. Like, what about Bend Studios? I haven't heard from them in forever. I don't even know what Bend Studios is working on these days. Do we know? I literally didn't Google this before I got on to do this recording, so, I guess my bad, but I'm kind of worried about Bend Studio. Sony Santa Monica, I know they're working on God of War stuff, and we know Naughty Dog's working on Intergalactic. I'm sure they're all fine. And Insomniac is working on Wolverine. Yeah, I don't know. Other than that, I'm not sure what all of the studios are doing. I would think that any one of them could be in trouble, though, once their game that's currently in the works ships. I don't know. What's the order of the day? What about Bungie? Bungie's got Marathon coming out. Seems like there's a lot riding on Marathon for Bungie. Feels like if that doesn't go over the way that they want it to, like, Bungie could be in trouble next. And my question there is, like, how realistic are their expectations for Marathon, right? Because it could be like a Square Enix situation where back when they still had Tomb Raider games would come out and they would be like, we're not happy with how that did. It only did like 5 million units or something like that, right? It could just be that they have unrealistic expectations and they're living in fantasy land. And Marathon didn't break 10 million. Well, see ya, Bungie. I don't know. I'm just feeling very pessimistic about things right now over at PlayStation, and it's disappointing, man. A longtime fan of the brand here. They used to have some real soul. They used to do really cool stuff. I really miss the days when it was clear to me that Sony enjoyed being the home of studios that would push video games forward, right? Like they were so proud of The Last of Us. They were so proud of Ghost of Tsushima. They were so proud of God of War 2018. When they would do these, you remember back, they did these E3 presentations. God of War had the one where they had the big orchestra play the theme from the new God of War game, and you had that crazy blonde lady doing like the wild the vocalizations during the performance that like everybody was like, whoa, listen to her, like it was big, it was flashy, it was a statement about the confidence behind their game, and that was really cool. And they did it again with Ghost of Tsushima. They did the guy playing the woodwind instrument up on stage. He was like one of the very few people in the entire world who was like considered a master of playing that instrument, and that was all in celebration again and of Ghost of Tsushima, and a sign of confidence behind what they had. And that stuff that seems really far away now. PlayStation doesn't feel that way to me anymore. And even before the State of Play, like it hadn't felt like that to me. Before the Blue Point closing, it didn't really feel like that to me anymore. It hasn't been the same company in a while. So yeah, this just feels like another step further away from those days, and that is a real bummer. I don't know. I don't know what to think. I mean, I know we still have great games coming from them. I mean, Blue Point closing does not change the fact that State of Play was all killer, no filler. Like, there's great stuff coming, but it does also, it does also point to their reliance on third parties, right? Third party games are really driving PlayStation 5 and have. I know Ghost of Yotei did good, but I don't know. I don't know. Are they going to open another studio because Ghost of Yotei did well and say like, we need more Ghost of Yoteis, or are they going to just say, okay, great job, Sucker Punch, make another one of those and continue to keep them under the microscope? I think probably the latter, right? I don't think that they're expanding the business and opening new studios anytime soon. That's not kind of really where I'm expecting PlayStation to go. Hardware-wise, for PlayStation, there's been stories trending about them talking about like, maybe the PS6. When I say them talking, I don't mean Sony. I just mean like industry analysts talking about, maybe Sony will delay the PS6 into 2029. I've even heard as far out as 2030. Personally, I'm fine with that, and I think that is actually the smart move for them. I think trying to launch hardware right now, same reasons as what I said earlier for Xbox. I think trying to launch expensive new hardware right now in the midst of a poor economy in the US, in the midst of hardware availability issues, componentry issues, added challenge there. And I know that they got to spool up the deals on this stuff in advance, and so there is a chance that, or the argument, I guess, to be made that like, they've probably got a lot of this stuff in the works for the PS6 already, and you can't really like just press the wait button on that stuff, so it's coming one way or another. And I would say, okay, maybe, but I think there's a lot of incentive to continue supporting the PS5 and PS5 Pro for a while now. And I will just say, consider that right now, if you are Capcom, for example, they're a great example. Let's look at Capcom for a second. You're putting out Resident Evil 9. You're launching it on PS5. You're launching it on Xbox. You're doing a PC release, which is going to be Steam Deck verified also. And then you're also doing a Nintendo Switch 2 version of that game. Like, that's great. You've got your game out on all those platforms. If you have a PS6 in the mix there, I guess you can release, an extra frame rate version of the game, or maybe a ray traced version of that game or something a year later on PS6. But like, is that going to be incentive enough for people to buy the PS6? Because it's probably going to be, I would guess, at least $500, probably more, considering that the prices on the current PS5 and PS5 Pro are more than $500. I mean, I guess you can get a digital one these days for $400 still when it goes on promotions and that kind of thing. But I just don't see a PS6 launching for anything less than like $600, and I think that's optimistic even, especially if it's a situation where, okay, the ink has dried already on our manufacturing deals. Like, these things are coming, like, one way or another. They're still coming when they're coming, and we may as well put them on shelves rather than put them into storage. Well, then I think they're going to be expensive. And I think in a crappy economy where people are struggling to afford luxuries like a gaming console, they're going to look at a Nintendo Switch 2, which is $450 right now, and they're going to look at that versus a PS6, and they're going to say, I'm going to get the Nintendo, right? Or maybe they PS5s are probably not going anywhere, so they could also alternatively look at a PS5 digital and say, hey, my Resident Evil game's on that one too. I don't need the ray trace version. I need I need to save money more than I need that, so I'll take this $400 console along with my game, and that's their big expense there, right? So I don't know. I personally am planning on riding out my PS5 Pro for as long as I can. It's going to take exclusives to sell a PS6, and I just don't know that there's going to be a compelling exclusive right off the bat that's going to force my hand, I just kind of can't see it at the moment. Not to spend what I assume is going to be like $800. I mean, I bit the bullet on a PS5 Pro specifically because I was kind of worried about just riding out this gen for as long as I could, and I didn't want to ride out the generation on a base PS5. I was starting to worry a little bit about like the lifespan of the SSD in my launch PS5, and so I just thought, okay, go ahead and get the upgrade and ride it out. And you can make it to 2030 on your PS5 Pro probably. So that's why I got mine. And I still know people who are as big of gamers, if not more than me, that don't have a PS5 Pro yet. And are those people going to get a PS6? I would tell you maybe not right away. I don't know. We're not living in 2006 anymore. It's a pretty different landscape now. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure what the economy is going to look like, and I think that that's going to continue to be a really important factor in the success of the gaming industry overall, and particularly with the hardware, right? I think it's going to be just super challenging to launch hardware. I think Nintendo's an outlier because honestly, they're Nintendo, right? Nobody else has the family-friendly thing going for them. I just bought, or helped rather, get a Nintendo Switch for my niece and nephew, who are little kids, and it's the perfect system for them. It can be kept offline. I don't have to worry, their parents don't have to worry about them getting online to do anything. They can just play Mario Kart and Pokemon and all that stuff and be offline and none the wiser about any of the online ecosystem stuff. And you can't really do that the same way with a PS5. It's different. It doesn't, online is so much more of a presence on that kind of console. But I digress a little bit here. Really, it's the Marios and that kind of stuff that drive Nintendo's sales, and they put out their hardware with a new Mario Kart. I couldn't imagine a better game to launch new hardware with, despite like kind of mixed reviews here and there. I will say I was kind of disappointed with that at first as I started to play it, but I've since come around, and I like it quite a bit now. My wife and I play it pretty often, yeah, I've come around. I think that game's pretty good. I think obviously Donkey Kong was a Game of the Year contender last year, so a lot of people like that. I think Kirby and the Forgotten Land which is actually a cross-gen game for them. I think that one's pretty cool too. So I don't know. My point is kind of Nintendo's an outlier in that like they really have their exclusives locked in, and that's always what's driven their sales. And I think that's going to continue to be what makes or breaks Nintendo. And it sounds like the Switch 2 did pretty good last year, but I kind of think maybe that was the initial wave, right? That was the initial people with a lot of disposable income going for it, jumping in. I think you're going to see sales slow down some this year. Just taking a stab at that here based on where it feels like the economy is going and job numbers and stagnant wages and all that kind of stuff. Granted, I am not a paid analyst here, so I, of course, could end up being very wrong about all that. And also, all signs so far have indicated that the Switch 2 is doing absolutely great for them. But I don't know. I think we are seeing some signs of a slowing economy here in video games specifically. So I don't know. It seems like things could get tough for everybody soon. Anyway, I think that is all I've got to say on this stuff for now. Thanks for coming in, hanging out, listening. If you want to leave comments, I'm not just saying this to try and promote engagement here. I do genuinely like getting comments. I like reading what people think about this stuff. I think I've realized I miss podcasting here, basically. I miss having people to talk to about gaming industry stuff because I do find it so fascinating, and I guess it's almost as far back as I can remember, from the days of reading Next Generation magazine and stuff. I have loved talking about the inside of the industry part of video gaming. So I would like to come back and maybe do another one of these sometime in the not too distant future. But in the meantime, I do have a Ghost of Yote video that I've been working on for longer than I'd like to admit, but only because I've been really trying to take my time with it. I will give you a clue and just say that I am going to praise the hell out of that game. I think it's one of the greatest game experiences I've ever had. I really loved it, and I wanted to make a video kind of diving into that and showing it off some. So anyway, thanks for hanging out. Look forward to that, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.